Hey y'all, it's your girl Nadia.
And it's me, Coach T.
And we are two average people.
Back again.
We're back. Hey y'all.
What up?
What's up? What's up? We're here. We're alive. We're healthy. We're blessed. We're all of the things, right? We have some stuff to talk about, y'all.
Definitely.
For real, got some stuff to talk about. So we look forward to it. Today we're going to touch on colorism.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
One thing that I want to start by talking about the definition of colorism, which is the prejudice or discrimination against individuals with dark skin tone, typically among people of the same ethnic or racial group.
Right. Let's just talk about our culture when Black people kind of discriminate against other Black people, specifically when they're darker skin tone versus
lighter skin tone.
Yeah.
You know, babe, I had some issues growing up believing that my dark skin tone wasn't beautiful.
Yeah.
I never thought necessarily that I wasn't beautiful per se, but if I was in a group, like say I go to the gym, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's obviously women of all different colors, shapes, sizes, everything. I always thought that, well, they're not going to look at me first.
Okay.
Right? Mainly because I'm dark skinned.
Gotcha.
And I think that stemmed from growing up hearing stories like in Trinidad, where my mom is from. You know, she said back in that time, the men of that generation preferred lighter skinned women. And that's because for her, she was dark. Her two sisters were lighter. They were light skinned.
Okay, yes. I can see that.
She noticed that her sisters got more attention than she did. At least that was her perception of it.
So do you think that was something that was kind of taught to her by experience or something that kind of was handed down to her by, you know, the lighter skinned women in her life kind of also perpetuating that?
I think it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
I think her experience led her to believe that she wasn't as beautiful as her sisters, but also that was probably what was being put forth in that time.
Okay.
And so, you know, it was passed on to her. She passed it down to me. And therefore, I believe that, you know, where I believe I'm a beautiful Black woman.
Yes, you are.
I also believe that I'm not necessarily the first woman that men will look at.
First one that I look at.
Because of my dark skin.
I don't know. I never had that kind of issue. For me, I never really considered my skin tone kind of either way. I was never threatened by light skinned dudes. And, you know, when we was coming up, light skin was in. I just didn't care. It didn't make me know, never mind, one way or the other. But it's interesting that you had that experience.
Yeah.
Because from what I remember, you know, guys was chasing you left and right. At least that's what it felt like. Because I was in that race like, nope, excuse me, getting past you. Got to the front of that line, didn't I? Yeah, I did.
I don't know about all that.
Yeah, I did.
But, you know, it made me think about this clip that I watched the other day. I want to play it for y'all so y'all can kind of see what we're talking about.
All right, let's take a look.
You know, men do it as opposed to women do the same thing. So how they want, you know, a dark-skinned man, right? And why don't you like light-skinned men? Oh, well, light-skinned men are bitches. They soft, they feminine. But he had all of these negative characteristics that they associated with light-skinned men. And the dark-skinned men always is associated with masculinity and they're tough and they're more of a man, which is why when you ask most women what kind of man you want, they always say tall, dark, and handsome. To me, that is absolutely a form of colorism, because if women can associate light skin with being feminine and, you know, soft, then it's no different from a Black man saying like, well, dark skin women are aggressive, masculine. It's the same concept, but again, we put a lot of emphasis on when, you know, men do it as opposed to women do the same thing.
So shout out to the Daily Wrap Up crew and their podcast. A podcast I've been following for a while. You guys do great work over there. Shout out to you guys. And I love this conversation, but it was in the context of relationships and how colorism from their perspective and how they were having the conversation was how colorism from one gender to the other and vice versa appears in relationships and how it works and the things that can go right and the things that can go wrong in the perception of it.
Yeah. I really, that was a really interesting clip. I agree. It's interesting that he talks about it from both sides. And so luckily you didn't have this experience.
I didn't, but I know brothers who did. So this is not something for me that I can speak on directly, but first person indirectly, absolutely. I've watched a lot of brothers say to them, downplay themselves because they were dark, or just think that they were just better because they were lighter. I watched both sides.
It's funny because in his example, he's saying that women looked at the light skinned men as feminine and soft, but looked at the dark skinned men as
masculine. But again, when I was coming, see, he's younger, but when I was coming up, it was the complete opposite. Dark skinned men were the ones who were considered not as attractive, not as good looking, and everybody was on the light skinned dude with the pretty hair and the pretty eyes, whatever the hell that meant. But ultimately, the tables have turned.
I guess it's your experience, because you do hear a lot of women say, yeah, I want a man that's tall, dark, and handsome.
Tall, dark, and handsome. Right.
So
I never really understood what that meant, because when I was coming up, dark-skinned dudes was just not the look.
And that's how I felt as well as a woman, that dark-skinned women weren't the look, because like he said, sometimes people associate dark-skinned women as aggressive or masculine or all of these things. And it's like, yeah, well, I mean, and so this is why we're having the discussion, because it goes to show you that is it really color? Is it really the melanin in your skin that makes you soft or masculine or strong? Or I don't know that we can say it for any of it, but I feel like it has created a lot of
lines in the sand,
for sure,
some divides,
true divides.
And one of the ways that they were talking about it in that particular episode I found was very interesting. Was his point in that particular clip was, when a woman is being a colorist, it's more accepted than when a man is being a colorist in the same exact way. So it was interesting, because what he was saying effectively in the clip was, when a man says a woman who is dark skinned is masculine or tough or aggressive, it's the same thing when a woman says, a light skinned man is soft or feminine or the complete opposite. It's the same thing, but one is accepted. It's okay for a woman to make that kind of distinction about a man, but it's not okay for a man to make that kind of distinction about a woman. And I think his overall point was, those distinctions should just end, because the distinctions themselves are silly.
Well, and I think, not to go off on a whole different topic, but I think in general, we as women, we are taught, and we are, I don't know if it's taught, but we are naturally just more selective in that way. Right. And so because we're selective, I think a lot of things are, and to your point, it's okay on one side, but it's not okay. And I'm not saying it's okay either way.
Right.
But I just know that we as women tend to be a bit more selective of certain things.
I guess in my mind, selective is not a bad thing, but I can honestly hear what he's saying. I think overall, though, for a lot of things that men do, they're just not accepted kind of overall. A man's preferences are generally seen as toxic, irrespective of what he's talking about. And I understand where it comes from, because a lot of men in that way are toxic. But I don't think the inherent preference is toxic, where, again, in a woman, we never even go there. That's not even a part of the conversation. So it's a very interesting perspective.
Well, it is an interesting, but I think there is something to say about preferences. We all have them.
Yeah, absolutely.
The question is, when do the preferences become, are they a result of trauma?
Yeah, okay.
Or are they a result of experience?
Okay.
That is where I think, because, if I say I prefer light-skinned men, right? Someone on the other side who is a dark-skinned man who has some negative associations with colorism, could be offended by my statement.
Right.
Just me saying I prefer light-skinned men. That could be. You wouldn't necessarily, because you don't necessarily have that growing up, as you so rightfully said. It wasn't something with you.
Yeah, nothing that would affect
me. But
that
somebody else who has a past experience dealing with their colorism or whatever could be another dark-skinned man could be totally offended by that statement just by my preference of light-skinned men.
I guess so, but my thought process is, if that guy gets offended at your preference in that way, that guy is more looked at as weak and not sure of himself,
or unhealed,
insecure. That's always the word that's thrown around when it comes to men.
Or unhealed,
right?
Like hasn't dealt with necessarily. One could say that he hasn't dealt with his issues,
right?
His experience, his past negative issues.
Yes.
I think me personally, where I have issues is I prefer light-skinned women because all dark-skinned women ...
Yeah, now
that's where I can admit that my triggers lie. Mm-hmm. Because you're now talking about me when you say all dark-skinned women or all light-skinned men or all whatever.
Right.
And that may be that person's experience. So are they entitled to their experience?
Right.
Sure.
Right.
But let's go a little deeper. I like light-skinned women because all the dark-skinned women I've dated are ...
Now, is that still
change?
Preference? Is that colorism? Is that, I don't know, because from my perspective, you're entitled to your experience as a human being. And if that's been your experience, I would, ask you what circles you ran in, because that's definitely not true of all black women, but that's also not what you said. I don't know. That becomes kind of tricky. I feel like this is one of those topics that aren't going to get solved in one conversation.
It's not.
But it's great to be able to have the conversation so that you can get even more clear in yourself about what your preferences may be, but also how to hear other people's preferences without being triggered, or how to deal with your triggers once you realize you have been.
And that's the key. It's because, once you date and you're in relationship, each failed relationship, you put up some walls.
Yeah.
You now have baggage from that relationship, especially if it ended in a traumatic way or it ended in a bad way, right? So you put up these walls, and for every person you date, maybe they're all the last women or men you dated were dark skinned. And so now when you are entering into a new experience with a dark skinned person or a light skinned person, right? You don't even realize that you have this wall up, right? Because of your past experience. And that brings you into the relationship guarded. And that person feels it. And then it's all, so I think you have to be aware of where you are. And that's why I started off saying, I definitely had issues with it, we're going to wrap it up soon. But I know for me, another thing that has led to my issues that I have with it are celebrities.
Oh, see, okay.
Like when you look
let's talk about it.
When you look at a majority of the black celebrity men, they're with light-skinned women.
Or women of different races entirely.
Let me tell y'all, sisters, I love all black women. All black men. Like all shades. I'm not knocking y'all at all. Y'all are beautiful. No matter if you're dark, light, or whatever. So this is not a knock on light-skinned women at all, right? But for me, as a dark-skinned woman looking at the celebrities, all of the women are light-skinned. Yeah. Majority of them. I'm not saying all. I mean, there's some people that obviously have dark-skinned women, but a lot of them are light-skinned women. And so for me, looking at this, I'm like,
that must...
If I'm not gonna lie, I feel some kind of way about it. Like, and again, that might be their preference. That might be who they're attracted to. I'm not knocking that at all, but I'm going to be honest. I'm being vulnerable saying that I feel some kind of way about it.
I understand that. I don't know. Celebrities don't necessarily fall into my purview about preferences as well, but I can understand where you're coming from. I can totally see that. I've always been of the mind that, especially for the celebrity, that there's just not enough. Celebrity life is not our lives. It's not real life. For them, they live in a bubble, and that bubble has a predominant shade, and that's not good in and of itself. Their ecosystem, to me, is what is driving that preference more than anything else. So I don't know, but again, I'm not a celebrity. I'm not usually around a whole ton of them in their daily lives. So that's me just that's pure conjecture.
Yeah, we don't know. It's a whole different
But
life.
I think you bring up a very valid point, and it should probably be a part 2 to this.
Yeah, we might have to do a part 2 to this, y'all. But we really also want to hear your thoughts. What have been your experiences with colorism, if you've had any? Where do we draw the line of preference versus, negativity? Where, we really want to hear from you guys. So comment down below, reach out to us. Let us know what you think. About it,
this is a great conversation.
Yeah,
for sure. For sure.
All right, y'all. We'll talk to you soon. Remember, we're better together.